So the first, the fifth one that we'll be looking at is eigenvalues and condition index. Okay, and eigenvalues, you know what eigenvalues mean, but to get the eigenvalues related to a regression, you need to have software, and obviously you will have that. So either you use eViews or Stata, that doesn't really count. Okay, all of them produce the eigenvalues. Okay. And both of them also produce condition index. So while using software, you will get eigenvalues and condition index, both of them. You will learn in masters another method which is called PCA in short, which is called principal component analysis. There we will again study eigenvalues in a bigger way. Okay. So let's just say what is the rule here. So condition index is something which is constructed from the eigenvalues. So let us first write this condition number k. So what is condition number k? It is the maximum eigenvalue divided by the minimum eigenvalue. That's what it is. Okay. Then what is the condition index? The condition index is simply root over k. So it is basically root over max eigenvalue and minimum eigenvalue. So what is the rule of thumb here? The rule is this: if k is between 100 and 1000 with equal to 1000, then there is moderate to strong multicollinearity. So if k is between 100 and 1000, there is moderate to strong multicollinearity. If k is strictly greater than 1000, there is severe multicollinearity. That is, we now have to worry about our work. We have to think of remedial measures. For the first one also, we must think of remedial measures. Okay. So that's the rule. The sixth one is based on tolerance and VIF, things that we just defined. Tolerance and VIF. So what is the rule of thumb here? The rule of thumb is if VIF j means jth variable, if VIF j is greater than 10, that is, if Rj square is greater than 0.9, comma, jth variable is said to be highly collinear. Is said to be highly collinear. Okay. So this is the rule of thumb. And again, similarly, since tolerance is the inverse of VIF, you can understand how the rule changes. So for tolerance, it will be less than 0.1. So the rule is if VIFJ is more than 10, which will imply that Rj square is greater than 0.9, then jth variable is said to be highly collinear. But there is one loophole in this argument. There is one loophole, obviously. The loophole is this. We noted that if I am observing high sample variance, or sorry, high variance of any beta. Okay, so the loophole, or the, yeah, I'll say that's as a loophole. It's not really a disadvantage, but loophole is obviously that variance of beta j hat, it depends on three things: sigma square, sum over xj square, and VIFJ. So whenever you have a very high variance, you must check it. Check these three. And in that case, if you find this, then obviously highly collinear. Okay, so that is the thing. This last one, that is the seventh one, technically speaking, it is the best approach, but still we write it last because sometimes making this and rather than scatter plot. So why you are writing scatter plot last? You know what a scatter plot or a scatter diagram is. You have done that earlier, right? So why I'm writing this last? The very simple reason is this, that constructing a scatter diagram, that's very simple. But to get the idea, or to intuitively, or to look at the pattern and think it out, whether we have multicollinearity or not, when there is a multivariate setup, that is very difficult. Okay, as I have said earlier also, that even if you are looking at a 3 variable scatter plot, from that 3D, identifying the relationship is quite difficult, but still scatter plot is always advised, whether you have multicollinearity or not. Just try to look at it whenever it is possible. Whenever it is not, then it's fine. Okay, now last but not the least, one thing that I must say, that we have studied 7 different detection criterias or 7 different detection methods. The only one problem is that we also said that each of them, they are not really tests. So they are rule of thumb, right? And they have their own advantages and disadvantages. So advantages obviously that you can detect it, but there are disadvantages that we talked about. And whenever there is multicollinearity, okay, a combination of them, or one or two, one of them will work and the others will not. So the first point is your own suspect, your own, your own doubt, or whether you suspect multicollinearity or not in the sample, because it's not a population phenomenon, it's a sample specific problem. So if you suspect, like the example of income and wealth, if you suspect that, then you employ, I'll suggest actually at least 3-4 of them. Okay, and you see whether some one of them is actually saying that there is multicollinearity. Okay, so we have finished the detection ideas, and the next topic, obviously, that we'll do in the next session. The next topic is the remedial measure. So when you have multicollinearity, what can we do? And as we know, that I have said that otherwise it is also called micronumericity or small sample problem. One of the trivial remedial measure is you do nothing instead of trying to increase the sample size. You do that and you may have removed it, or otherwise just do nothing, because anyway the OLS estimators are blue. So statistically speaking, only statistically speaking, you are fine. But sometimes, yes, in economics, obviously that does create a problem because of the higher variances. So we'll see that the rule of thumb procedures here also as a remedial measure. Okay, and we'll do that in the next session.